How would Kid, Zoro, or Law do if they were to fight Oden in a 1v1 scenario? Shout out to Shicey for asking the question, but there are a couple things I gotta get through first. First one being is that I don't consider Oden to be someone that was in his prime per se. Not to say like he was old and out of his prime, I just don't think he had enough time to learn enough about the world to become as good as he was going to be. And basically what I'm saying is, if Oden was able to live after this day and continue forward, that would have been prime Oden to me, because he would have been able to like grow to his fullest extent. So even though Kaido puts him in this like top 5 category with everybody else that was able to fight him, I would have to put Oden as like the weakest person in that category. It is what it is. He's been a pirate for the least amount of time. He may have traveled the world for 4 years, but I would definitely say that Law, Kid, and Zoro all have more experience than he does, if that makes sense. Because I get that Oden was definitely older than these guys before he died, but they just traveled the world more, fought more devil fruits, fought more hockey users, fought minks, giants, befriended minks and giants, added them to their crews. Like, they've seen and dealt with more than Oden has. And I would imagine it's that experience that would give them an edge in a fight versus him. And let me get this out the way now, just because he can scar Kaido like this does not mean that he is beating these other 3 characters. Not saying he would lose just yet, hold on. But I really need you guys to stop trying to scale characters to attacks that they do. Because even though Oden's able to output this much damage, he did go down to a bonk to the back of his head by a weaker Kaido in his base form. And like, sure, he was off guard, but this is still a base form, much weaker Kaido than the one that we're dealing with 20 years later. A stronger Kaido that's in hybrid form that Zoro was able to also scar, mind you. So if we're talking pound for pound raw damage, from what we've seen, Zoro objectively puts out more damage than Oden does. Because doing this to a hybrid Kaido is a better feat than doing this to a dragon Kaido that is weaker, and also like, you won't miss in this form, he's a giant target. Likewise, the big moves that we've seen from Kid and Law are also just stronger moves in the Paradise Totsuka. Now, when it comes to Kid and Law, this is more devil fruit power, so I'm not saying that either of them are pound for pound stronger than Oden. They're not. Maybe Kid is, because y'all will sleep and hate on him, so it is what it is there. But Law is definitely the weakest out the 4. But due to his devil fruit and what he can do with that devil fruit, I would imagine he'd be able to beat somebody like Oden. When Oden first left Wano for the first time, that was like his first time dealing with devil fruit users in proper. That was his first time seeing sword techniques that he wasn't used to on Wano. He can get taken off guard by things that he has not seen before. This dude is from an isolationist country, and a lot of y'all will forget about that when talking about a versus topic. But Oden is definitely the type of dude that if Law were to extend his sword with like shock or puncture Willy, Oden would try to block it. He don't know what an awakened devil fruit is. He don't know what the OPOP fruit does. He will sit there, try to block it. It will go through his swords and then shock him through his chest. And if it broke powered up Big Mom's ribs, then like it's shredding his insides. Unless you think Oden, who got knocked out by a base Kaido to a bonk to the back of the head, is more durable than Big Mom. And don't try to hit me with the off guard thing. This whole panel right here was off guard, and that's through her face. She had internal damage done to her brain and got back up after this. Oden is dying probably. And then versus Kid, just because this dude is holding metal, whenever Kid wants to, he's just going to send him flying. I know I'm gonna have a couple of special people in the comment section saying like, oh, because Oden was able to survive the one from Roger, he has to be stronger because Kid got beat by one from Shanks. Even though that misses 2 really big things. First thing it misses is that Roger was not trying to kill this dude Oden. Roger ran past Rayleigh and Scopper telling him like, hey, I want to see what a samurai from Wano can do. He's throwing out this divine departure to test Buddy out. Meanwhile, Shanks threw this at a dude to save his crew. They are not the same in these different scenarios. The second thing is Kid was hit off guard, Oden was not. Oden was running straight toward Roger when he got hit. He just didn't know what was coming because he didn't know anything about the outside world. It's actually more than 2 things, because like third, you also see that Oden was like partially blocking it with his sword at least a little bit too. And fourth, we don't even know if he was like using future sight to make sure he hit this dude. Shanks looked 10 seconds into the future to make sure that this hit was going to land. There was nothing Kid could do about it. Do not treat their scenarios against these divine departure users as the same. They are not. Just because Shanks did this does not mean Oden can do this, because we don't know if Oden had that level of future sight. Clearly he didn't, or else he would have known that was not his son that was snapped. We don't know if he has the same level of hockey that Shanks has either, which I would imagine he doesn't. I think a lot of y'all would think the same too. Not to mention, who do you think is faster, Shanks or Oden? Because I got my money on Shanks. So if Kid has to fight a swordsman that has not as much experience as Shanks, doesn't have future sight or doesn't have future sight on the level of Shanks, doesn't have sword skill on the level of Shanks either. Now, I think in the new Viver card that came out for Oden, it said that for him, during his time, he was the world's greatest swordsman or whatever that is. But I know the Viver cards sometimes are, not canon, so I'm taking it with a grain of salt. And even if he was the greatest swordsman during his time period, understand, he didn't have to fight a Mihawk, he didn't have to fight a Shanks. Basically, who would Oden have had to fight in order to gain that title? And would that person have been greater than or equal to Mihawk and Shanks? If the answer is no, I would not put Oden on Shanks' level. And if he's not on Shanks' level, it's a little immature to think that this scenario will play out the exact same way that it did with Shanks. If Shanks didn't have the future sight that he did, he wouldn't be dealing with Kid the way that he's dealing with him right now. Damn Punk will kill Oden if it hits him. I'll say that. If Big Mom couldn't shove this back, then Oden definitely couldn't either. And I think I talked about it a little bit, but I'll brush up on it a little bit more when it comes to Zoro versus Oden. But I would imagine that Zoro has more experience than Oden does. Yes, even though he is younger, because he's been on the seas and traveled around to fight more different types of people. Assassins like Mr. One, that skills are even recognized by people like Mihawk. CP9 masters like Kaku, though he got a little bit lucky because Kaku just got that devil fruit. The soul of Ryuma, the god of the sword, back on Thriller Bark. Fishmen during Fishman Island. Crazy different types of devil fruits from Dressrosa onward to Egghead. I would be much more comfortable in Zoro's ability to figure out a way to beat Oden than Oden's ability to figure out a way to beat Zoro. Not to mention, Zoro's biggest issue when it comes to combat is dealing with people that can either fly or control the terrain, which Oden can't do either. Kid and Law, I would say, have the advantage because of the experience that they have with their devil fruits to the point that they're also awakened. And with Oden's limited knowledge on the outside world, this dude would have a hard time even trying to figure out what their powers are before he gets beat by them. If Big Mom is getting magnetized and she can't get up without ripping up buildings, then Oden is just going to be stuck. It is what it is. But in both cases, I don't think they're better fighters than Oden at all. They would be winning because of the technicalness of their devil fruits and how busted they are. Zoro would actually have to fight that dude in close quarters though. And I would just think that current Zoro has way more experience to be able to beat Oden in combat than Oden would to beat this dude. After all, there was not a Mihawk to train Oden 20 years ago, but there was a Mihawk to train Zoro currently. And whatever experience you want to say Oden has, I would think the Mihawk training for 2 years gives Zoro the edge in swordsmanship, at least for me personally. Now, if you want to think that Oden's a better swordsman despite that, go ahead, that's all you. Just understand, for that to happen, that would mean that he would have to be trained by somebody that is as good, bare minimum, as Mihawk 20 years ago. And I just personally don't think that's possible. Especially with the understanding that every generation surpasses the previous one. I would imagine the newer World's Greatest Swordsman is better than the older World's Greatest Swordsman. Only exception will probably be Ryuma from 800 years ago, and it's only because we don't know what they were doing back in them ancient times. With the height differences in One Piece, Ryuma could have been 20, 30 feet tall, who knows? But at the end of the day, the fact that Oden was beaten before I feel like he had reached his full potential, especially since Kaido had that man dancing naked in the capital for 5 years. Like, if he wasn't doing that and he was locking in instead, he probably would have reached his peak, but Since that never happened, I would say that in a 1v1 scenario, I would give the advantage to Kid, Law, and Zoro individually. For two of them, I don't think they're stronger than him, but they win due to the technicalness and mastery of their devil fruits. Plus, Oden just not having a good matchup versus things he's never seen before. And the last one will win because he was actually trained by the world's greatest swordsman for longer than he's been traveling with the Straw Hats. So I would say that all three of these characters have a very solid case for beating somebody like Oden. And if you think otherwise, I would love if you were to explain yourself in the comment section down below. Don't just say L take and move on. Say why. Let's have a conversation here.